Okay, welcome back to the Shared Practices podcast. We have another episode of our case acceptance season. And George, I am always excited when we have this particular guest on the show. It's always just like makes me deeply happy inside.
Yeah, no, Dr. Scott Leune is on today, and he's somebody that I think we've both looked up to and have for a long time. I know I've read probably more posts about his on Dental Town than most people, so I definitely love hearing from him, and this is a great episode.
Yeah, I'm actually getting to go to the Business Masters seminar. What's the name? Business Mastery seminar?
No, Business Masters. I can't believe you haven't gone yet.
I haven't been. I've been in residency, and then yeah, I'm excited. No, it's going to be cool. The people from the Making of a Dental Startup Facebook page, I think a group of them are all going. So it'll be a lot of fun. There's going to be fellow podcasters there, and people that are just very active and excited about all this. So it's going to be an awesome course in December. So you've been to both. I guess, did yours get condensed? Like you did the Breakaway Startup and the Business Masters all in 1 week when you went, or have you been to them separately?
So I went like 3.5 years ago now. So I think the format was different.
Yeah.
Where it was the startup and then followed by the Business Masters, and the Business Masters had some group practice stuff in there.
Yeah.
And so it kind of all flowed together for like 4.5 days. And then he cut it up into 3, the startup, the Business Masters, and then the enterprise. He added stuff, I'm assuming.
Right.
And then, made it a 2-day thing. So so I don't know how mine would compare to maybe startup, Business Masters plus some cherry on top.
Yeah. You guys got the dental student special. Like I still regret to this day not getting to go with all you guys, but it's okay.
Yeah. Big mistake.
Yeah, I know. So we took a poll, and I talk about this in the interview. We took a poll on Facebook, and I apologize to all those people who really wanted Dr. Leune to talk about startups. But you guys know how George feels about startups. If I did a startup interview, George wouldn't even listen to it. So I had to do something else to get George to listen to this episode.
You said it, not me.
So let's dive into it. This is our interview with Dr. Scott Leune. Recently, I went to Washington, D.C. with my family for a wedding. We ended up using Uber every single time we needed to get somewhere. We could have taken a cab, which would have been more expensive, sometimes convenient, sometimes not, or we could have rented a car, which would have cost a little bit more up front, but we would have had more freedom. However, I would have had to navigate D.C., figure out where to park it, and then pay all the parking fees. So why did we use Uber? It was both more convenient and less expensive. That's the exact same thing with Lab Pronto. Lab Pronto is Blue Sky Bio's solution to both convenience and cost. So within Blue Sky Bio, you can just export to Lab Pronto and access all these labs across the country that are plugged in. You could buy your own 3D printer, have a lot more control, and become the lab yourself, or you could send your cases to a traditional lab that's going to charge you $400 to $500 per case for the designing and fabricating of the guide and sending it back. Why not have the best of both worlds? Why not have a more convenient solution that actually costs less? That's exactly what Lab Pronto is. Check it out within the Blue Sky Bio software. Click on the button at the very top called Lab Pronto. You're going to be exporting your cases and getting them back in no time. Okay, welcome to this interview of Shared Practices. We have with us today a repeat favorite guest on the show, Dr. Scott Leune. Scott, how's it going?
I'm doing great. I just got back from a week in Telluride, Colorado, my favorite place to be. So I'm refreshed. Today's first day back at work. So I'm good.
Nice. Skiing, snowboarding, what were you doing up there?
I usually go skiing once or twice a year, but the slopes aren't quite open yet. There's a ton of snow, but they haven't opened them up. So I just took my family, my wife, my 5 kids, and we just hung out for a week in the snow and played and ate too much and slept a lot. So that's what we did.
That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, thanks for sneaking us in right as you're fresh and ready to go. Our audience knows you from not only the many episodes you've been on, but also your seminars that you've taught. So you've got breakaway practice seminars, you've got dental whale, you've got a lot of many things that you've done and you've shared with us in the past. And originally we had scheduled this to talk about startups. We did a startup season, and we weren't able to get you on while we had that season. And we're now doing a season on case acceptance. And we put out to our audience on our Facebook page, okay, we're having Dr. Leune back on. Would you rather hear startups or case acceptance? And I think a large portion of our audience has actually been to Breakaway and is very on board with what you guys do and what you guys teach. And they've heard you talk about the idea of the importance of being able to increase your case acceptance, being able to sell, quote unquote, you're not selling anything that people don't need, but sell dentistry that's needed and ethical, and how that's a central skill that many dentists lack. And so our audience kind of said, no, like he's both very good at this, very persuasive in teaching your ideas and concepts and sharing, getting people on board with what you're doing, but also they wanted to hear your perspective on the data that you have around your docs and what works and what doesn't for case acceptance, for financial options, for getting patients to say yes. So that's kind of the premise for today. If we, we run out of stuff to talk about, we can always go back and talk about startups, because I know we've got, you have literally, like you said, thousands of slides as we were getting ready for this show today. So starting with that, what have you seen both personally and also from helping so many other doctors? What are some common mistakes and things that need to be done right with case acceptance?
Well, it's a great topic. So before we dive into the how, we have to kind of define what case acceptance is.
Okay.
Make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. So when I think of case acceptance, to me, the way we measure it is if a patient said yes to something, if they scheduled just one thing, we are calling that an accepted case. That, of course, that's not all that matters. But when we all are talking about, is our case acceptance good, bad, is it getting better, worse? We all have to understand, like, what is the number, right? What are we going to measure? And so that's the number that we measure.
So you're going from exam to accepted and returned for and completed one procedure, or just accepted and scheduled? Where do you draw the line?
Scheduled.
Okay.
Patient scheduled. Now understand that in our practices, patients can't schedule without paying. So first, scheduled also means paid. But if they scheduled at least, so if they need 4 crowns and 2 fillings and they scheduled just the 2 fillings, that's accepted.
Okay.
So really, case acceptance for us, that number that we measure, it's measuring, did the patient say yes? Did we get any kind of a yes from the patient? And when we look at that number, we commonly see practices with case acceptances in the 40s to 50% range.
Okay.
Some practices obviously are much less than that. And there's, I don't have the exact data in front of me, but I'll tell you that if I had to estimate based on what I see, I'd estimate that about a fourth are probably in the anywhere from 30s to 40s percentile range. And about half are in the 50s, and then a fourth are above that. And that's kind of how it plays out. When we look at our own practices and we ask ourselves, are we good or bad, or how are things going, we have very specific numbers we measure. So we feel in our practices that if we are less than 50, we are bad.
Okay. That's your benchmark of acceptableness.
Well, that's bad. So below 50 is bad. And when we look at 65 and up is good. So when we fall between 50 and 65, we're working on it. And we feel like we can grow more. But if we're over 65, to be honest, we're not focused on case acceptance anymore. We're not trying to push it up even further. It's too much work. There's other parts of the business that we need to spend our time on when case acceptance is already above 65%.
Let me ask you a question here with the tracking of this. You guys, I know you're big proponents of dental intel. The way that you just described the scheduled sum treatment, is that how it is naturally measured in dental intel, or do you have to set it up that way?
No, that is how dental intel measures it. They, of course, they measure other parts of this whole equation, but when I talk about case acceptance and dental intel talks about case acceptance, we're speaking the exact same language.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to clarify that for people. If they wanted to track things this way and use dental intel, it's like, okay, they're already on board with that.
Yeah. And, I think there's a lot of confusion when we talk about numbers and how it relates to what we actually do in a practice. I see dentists, they're looking at a bunch of numbers and because nothing really changes because they're just looking at numbers, but they don't understand what the numbers mean. It ends up being like they take this approach, this almost opposite approach to say, I'm just going to treat people well and do the best I can. And I think that's great. We should all treat people well and do the best we can. But when we use numbers, it's like taking an x-ray of our business. We can find little pieces of business decay when we scan our practice numbers. And that can lead us to just focus on correcting whatever little issue it might be. So if we scan a practice and we see our case acceptance is 47%, that should then trigger us to reevaluate the 5 or 6 major things that affect case acceptance and to understand if, are we doing those things well or not. So I can dive into those.
Yes, you said that. I'm like, chomping at the bit.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those things. So case acceptance. I'll just list a few things off and then maybe we can dive into each one in detail. But we look at case acceptance. We found a few things in our model, the breakaway model of running a practice. Our model, I guess, let me say that our model is one of many models, and I'm not saying our model is the only model that works, but our model is what we do. We believe in it passionately. We've trained people on it for probably 10 years now. And, we're connected to 17,000 dental practices. And of those 17,000, about 1,000 of them or so are actually running or attempting to run our model, right? And so we have a lot of data on our model. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, our model. So the breakaway model, we feel case acceptance is influenced by many things. So first of all, what does the dentist actually say? That definitely influences case acceptance, and that can actually trump everything else. So the stronger the dentist is at following the model of case acceptance, the less reliant we have to be on everything else. Another thing that can affect case acceptance.
We'll interrupt and dive in here. So I feel like that's one of the hardest ones to train is dentists who some are just very naturally good at talking with people and with discussing, treatment options and breaking things down in a way that's easy for the patient and closing these cases. And, some people are coming from maybe an ESL background, or maybe they don't have a lot of natural confidence. Have you guys found a way to help doctors who really struggle with that personally?
Yes. So, I'm going to list like 6 different things.
Okay.
Communication is one of them. And if communication is not strong, the other things can make up for it.
Sure.
However, on the communication side itself, there's tricks, there's tools. So first of all, a tremendous focus on the problem and the consequences of no treatment should be what we talk about. So if someone's got a cracked tooth and they need a crown, we want to focus all of our attention on what happens if that tooth breaks, as opposed to focusing our attention on what a crown is.
And how good of a crown it's going to be.
Right, exactly. So we should talk as little as possible about the crown. Everything else, all of our other emphasis should be on this can crack in half. It can split down to the nerve, down to the bone. You might need surgery. It can be very painful. All that's how we need to describe treatment, because you know what? That's exactly what could happen. I think a lot of dentists have been scared of conflict in a conversation. And the reality is, if we don't tell the patient just straight up, here's exactly what could happen. If we just beat around the bush, we're almost in the ears of a patient. We're almost saying that this is optional or elective or can wait, when we know that just about everything in dentistry will get worse over time. It will crack. It will break. We just don't know when. It's like a ticking time bomb. We don't know when the tooth will blow up on us, but it will. So let's not downplay the urgency of diffusing the bomb, right?
Right.
I think a lot of dentists do that. So, how can we have the confidence, though, to just say it like it is? I think all of these things that influence case acceptance will also give the dentist the ability to have more confidence in saying exactly what's going on.
Okay, so it's kind of a self-reinforcing system.
It is, yeah. So, the dentist needs to focus on the problem. The dentist also, just tools or tricks, we could use analogies. And, don't we talk about cracked teeth all the time?
Yeah.
We talk about decay all the time. So we should have a go-to set of analogies for those common things. Analogies that have been built around visualizing the problem. So if a patient's got a cracked tooth, I'm saying things like, it's like a crack in a windshield. It just keeps getting bigger until it all breaks. Or if they've got a cracked tooth and it doesn't hurt, I might use the analogy, well, you're not feeling any pain right now because it hasn't broken yet. It's kind of like you're driving and you've got a bulging tire and you don't know you're about to have a blowout, right?
Okay.
When we talk about cavities, analogy we might use is, cavity is kind of like, this decay, this rotten part of your tooth. It's kind of like having termites that are just going to burrow in deeper and deeper and eat away more and more of your tooth until it infects the nerve. And that's so visual.
Yeah, I'm getting gweebed out by the termites. Like that's disgusting. It's a good thing.
That's exactly what happens, though. You have a gum infection, right? Periodontal disease. That's an infection that is under your gum that is eating away at the bone that holds your teeth in, your jawbone. Like that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So, if we struggle with communication, one trick is to figure out the analogies that describe the problem and focus on the problem. You've done well if by the time you're done talking about the problem, there's this pause and then the patient responds, well, what do we need to do?
What can we do? They're like, okay, I'm worried about this. They've owned that problem.
Exactly. Then the solution is like a one sentence thing. Luckily, it hasn't broken yet. You need a crown. It's a cap that's going to hold the tooth together. And then you shut up. Right. And so, that's part of dentist communication. I think it's maybe let's call it a 3-prong approach for dentist communication.
Sure.
It's focusing on the problem. It's using analogies. And it's also not downplaying the urgency. This is a bomb. It will go off. We all know we don't know when, but it will. It could go off tonight. Like we don't know, right? So we can't downplay the urgency because, again, downplaying the urgency to a patient puts this now into the elective category.
I'm super grateful in that in dental school, my mom, we were in Arizona. She was in Canada. She was seeing her dentist up there, and she had a cracked tooth that he recommended a crown on. And like 2 weeks later, it broke. And, luckily they were able to save it. They were able to put a crown on it and everything was fine. But like for the rest of my life, I have that story, because people are always like, well, what would you do on your mom? Like, well, no, literally my mom had a cracked tooth. Dentist recommended, a crown and didn't accept treatment at that time and it broke on her. And so it's like, everyone needs to have some sort of story, maybe make it a little bit personal or maybe not, but still that urgency and that realization that sooner rather than later, something's going to go wrong.
I wish we didn't have to play these stupid games, to be honest with you. Like, I wish, like when I go to the hospital, if I've got, I don't know, if some cardiac surgeon comes up to me and says, Scott, you need heart surgery. I'm like, yes, doctor. I understand. When can I get it done? How quickly, right? That's not the way it is with dentistry anymore. We've almost been kind of retailized. That's not a word, but,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're commoditized. We're it's just
like, well, maybe.
The stronger we are communicating naturally, the less of this stuff we have to worry about. But also, the more goodwill we have in our practice, the less we have to worry about this stuff, right? Like if we've got patients that have been in the practice for 10 or 15 years, suddenly, whether we use an analogy or not may not matter that much.
Okay.
Or if we're an associate in a practice that has a ton of goodwill, we got to know that a big chunk of our case acceptance is not because of us. That we're in that practice with a lot of goodwill. And I see that as a big problem. I see associates going out in the private practice thinking that they were a higher producer than they really are because they were riding the coattails of the goodwill and of the recall patient base of the practice they're working at. And suddenly when they're out on their own, they feel a little naked because they don't have enough patients, enough case acceptance to make them good money. So that's like one of the switches as you become an owner, that's a switch that's flipped in your brain. You suddenly realize, oh crap, I need to learn. I need to change. I need to grow. Kind of like when you have your first kid, you're like, oh crap, now this is what it's like to be a dad, right? Life completely changes.
Oh yeah. So what are some of these other systems then that we can build that complement that doctor's ability to communicate?
Well, there's some little things and there's some big things that influence case acceptance that we've at least measured in our model. So one little thing is that we know that if we present finances, the money part of the treatment plan, if we present that in the operatory instead of in the front office area, the case acceptance is higher. So, most offices, after you do the exam, finish up, patient is then gets out of the chair and is walked to the front office to talk to a treatment coordinator, sometimes in a private consultation room. That's like what most offices probably do.
Sure.
And we don't think that's what we should do. Based on our data, when we keep the patient in the chair, surrounded in that clinical environment where they just heard the doctor tell them what they need and they saw the photos and they're still mentally in that mode, that's when we present finances and attempt to get case acceptance.
Do you feel like part of that is just almost even like a time difference? It's like by the time, they get all wrapped up, cleaned up, gone to the front desk, it's just now they're thinking of other things, they're not, feeling that same urgency that they felt maybe in the chair. It's how much of a difference does it make? I guess that's my next question is how much difference between front desk and presenting in the back?
I think that you're right. I think so. If we think about it, if we get them up out of the chair, now they're getting their kid, they're getting their purse, they're standing, they're getting in the mental mode of leaving. And if we put them in a new environment, now they're in the money environment, the business environment, right? And so now it's not about the clinical anymore. Now they see, okay, I'm now going to get the pitch. Right. So I think if we leave them in the clinical environment, they're not worrying about their kid. They're not picking up their purse and they're not, suddenly changing their mindset. They're still where it's all about the tooth that's going to break in half. And that's, that's where we want to present finances. However, it's hard to present finances in the operatory if you take 15 minutes to present finances. And so, it's easy for me to say do it in the op, but if you don't know how to present it in 2 minutes, well, then doing it in the op could be a problem. So that's another thing that we found that affects case acceptance is what we actually show the patient. Like, what is the piece of paper that they see? And my opinion is that the treatment plan that you print from Dentrix or EagleSoft or Open Dental or all the software programs out there, that has got to be the worst possible thing to print and show a patient.
Yeah, if you're trying to convince someone of like, this is a good thing and this is what we're going to go with, it's not clear, it's not easy, it doesn't make sense, it encourages them to nickel and dime.
It's terrible. And it shows, I just want what insurance covers, or what is this, what is that, what is a resin, why does insurance only pay this much, or I've got a treatment plan printed in one of my in our business masters seminar where we talk about this stuff. And I counted up how many numbers were listed on that treatment plan. It was 88. 88 different costs were listed because it showed full fee, it showed insurance discounted fee, and net fee, and patient portion. And it was just crazy to me. And so what we need to do is almost the opposite. We need to, whatever we print, whatever we show a patient, should not be in dental speak. It should be in English. Like, it shouldn't say resin composite number 4, MOD. It should say white filling number 4.
Right.
Tooth number 4. White filling, porcelain crown. It should be in English. And also, it should not have 88 different numbers on it. It should have the least amount of numbers possible. What we print out and teach has just a few numbers. It says, here's all the work you need done, crown, fillings, whatever it is.
Sure.
Here's full fee, here's the insurance discount, here's the insurance payment, and here's your fee. It shows 4 numbers. It does not show 88. It shows 4 numbers.
4.
And those are 4 great numbers because if you can see we're stepping down in cost, we get to highlight you've got great insurance. You've got a discount of $482. and insurance will pay $594. So your portion is only $810, right? It allows us to say that. When we print it out that way, suddenly the patient isn't asking about what's a resin composite. They're not asking, why does insurance only cover this much of that? And they're definitely not picking and choosing from this itemized list. You know what? I'll just take that with a side of this because that's all insurance pays for.
Yeah.
So the conversation, because you got people that don't know me or know our company, you have to understand that we are complete nerds when it comes to trying to understand the business of dentistry. So much so that we do time studies of dentists. We figured out how many minutes dentists take to cover hygiene and what the proper scheduling structure is. We figured out how long it takes to have a phone call if you talk about insurance versus if you don't. I can tell you it's 12 minutes if you do, it's 2.5 minutes if you don't. And we figured out how long it takes to present finances with the old form versus a financial form that I'm describing to you that doesn't show all this stuff itemized. And we saw that the main difference in time has to do with, do you print out the bullshit Dentrix treatment plan form that shows 88 numbers, or do you print out a simplified version in English? And the difference of that is a good 10 minutes or up. Like, it only takes a couple minutes to present English with 4 numbers compared to...
There's only so much you can talk about with 4 numbers.
Right. And so what's also cool is there's all these other kind of dominoes that fall in your favor. Because when the conversation only takes 2 minutes, well, now you can have it in the op. And when it only takes 2 minutes, suddenly you don't need some treatment coordinator, insurance and billing guru of 20 years who's the diva in your office presenting it. You could have almost anyone present finances when it's simple with 4 numbers in English. And also, patients on the case acceptance side are paralyzed when they don't understand what is on the form and when they see 88 numbers.
Yeah.
The safest thing for a patient to do is to say no.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
They never say no. What do they say? They say,
well, maybe I'll wait, or maybe, what's this for? Do we need to do this? They start, asking questions, or
let me think about it. I'll call you back. Let me talk to my husband. Yeah. Those are all ways of saying no.
Soft no.
So, because they want to avoid conflict. Most patients do have respect for the dentist and the dental office, and they're going to be very nice saying no. So, that form, I don't know how on earth someone decided that's the best sales tool we got. Let's print that out in Dentrix. That thing's horrible. So that's another thing. That's another part of this case acceptance equation is, let's change the form to English with 4 numbers, and let's present this in 2 minutes in the operatory.
That sounds fantastic. Where do you get pushback? So you are teaching this across your whole enterprise, to all these docs coming into you to learn. I'm sure there's a lot of people that you tell them that. You tell them, hey, if you simplify the form, you could do it in the operatory. And then there's a whole bunch of yeah buts. Like, why do people not actually implement this system? Where does the pushback come?
It comes from the treatment coordinator. Treatment coordinators push back because, the treatment coordinator has been doing the same thing the same way for who knows how long. And deep down inside, the treatment coordinator doesn't necessarily want to learn something new. They don't necessarily want to improve. What they really want is someone to say you've been doing it right the whole time. and
so, some validation and some love.
Of course. So it's the treatment coordinator that pushes back. Whether it's teaching them a new way of scheduling or a new way of presenting finances, it's the treatment coordinator. And the problem is that the treatment coordinators will always have a good argument, because in business, there's not a perfect system ever. So you can create a system, but there will be a crazy situation or a crazy patient that will break every system.
Sure.
You give me a system, I'll make up some crazy situation that will make your system not work. And so it's those crazy situations that we all remember. And it's those crazy situations that our teams use to try to justify not making a change. And we can't do that. See, systems aren't for the crazies. Systems are for the masses, to handle the masses with the most success in the most predictable, efficient way possible. My system needs to be for most people. Then for the crazy people, I'm going to have to handle that on a case-by-case basis. What I don't want to do is create a system for all crazy people and all the other people. Like a great example is, a phone call should only take a few minutes, but if you've had a crazy situation with insurance, with billing, and with medical needs, and something really screwed up happened with this weird situation, it might be tempting for your receptionist to now suddenly get a full medical history breakdown on every patient, and full dental benefits and medical insurance and family history of medical issues and dental issues and all of that on the first phone call to try to prevent this crazy situation, only to now miss a ton of phone calls in the office because every call takes 20 minutes. So, we have to be very focused on what does the data say? What's the right thing to do for the masses? Let's not let our team, who many times doesn't want to change, use some crazy situation to try to push back and justify not changing.
Okay, perfect. So what other systems can we implement for the case acceptance? So we've talked about presenting in the operatory. We've talked about some skills for the doc. We've talked about simplified treatment forms. Are there any other kind of systems that you guys have built or seen effective?
Yeah, so we know that, and a ton of people have said this before me, but we know that clinical images helps. And what I don't know though is why. So, I think we all assume if the patient can see the problem, they'll be more likely to say yes. I don't actually know if that's true. What I find the value in with clinical images is and this is going to sound kind of strange, but it gives more confidence for the doctor to actually fully diagnose and communicate everything. I almost feel like the images is a tool for the doctor, because so if you don't have images and this new patient walks in, they don't know they need a bunch of work, and you see they need a ton of work. If you don't have a
scary moment if you don't have that trust yet.
Right. You don't have trust. You don't use images, and you're just going to tell them you need 10 grand worth of work done. That is very difficult for the patient to believe. But more importantly, though, the dentist is so scared deep down subconsciously to say that to a brand new patient that they don't. They start downplaying everything. They start watching teeth and keeping an eye on this. And at some point you'll need that. And then by the time they're done, they've whittled down the 10 grand that the patient really needs down to just, $500 and one little visit next. And I feel that is due to two problems. Number one, not having the images to give the dentist confidence to even say it all.
Okay.
And number two, not having a financial option that would make even a $10,000 treatment plan doable. So let's start with images here.
Okay.
If we put the images on the screen, suddenly the dentist is just listing what they see where the patient can see it too. No longer are we, the dentist, worried about, can the patient trust me? It's not about trust when they see it on the screen. It's just right there.
Yeah.
So now that gives me the emotional freedom to say everything that I see. Sure. Because I just see it, and now you see it too, right?
Your theory is that you could almost then take away that image, and if you had the doctor say all those same things with the same amount of confidence, it probably would work just as well.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I think. I don't have data to back me up. I just have...
It's an interesting theory, and I can see that it totally makes sense in that, you go to another medical professional, like you were saying earlier, and they don't, necessarily show you the endoscope or this other thing that leads them to the exact diagnosis. They tell you what your issue is, and you believe them.
That's right. And there's plenty of dentists that just say what there is, big treatment plans, whatever it is, and patients say yes. And we look at them and say, oh my God, they're such great communicators. Well, maybe, but they really have a lot of confidence, and they have enough confidence to just say it all. The reason why I think what I think is because we've helped about 120, 130 dentists build startups.
Okay.
And We have different ways we help them. Long-term consulting, short-term consulting, lots of different ways to do that. And in coaching them, this is a very common struggle. They're a kind of first-time owner. They're now, we track through Dental Intel how much they diagnose. And we know they have to diagnose about 4 times what they're ultimately needing to collect to pay their bills. That's a common ratio. And when they're not diagnosing a lot, which most of them don't in the beginning, when I dive deep in and get down to it, I feel almost like a psychologist sometimes. I get down to the nitty-gritty of why. It's because they're scared to run off the patient when they tell the patient everything.
Yeah.
And when we then use clinical images and different payment options in the practice, that gives them now the confidence to say everything there is. Because a patient sees it, it's not about trust anymore. And the dentist knows there's payment options to make whatever all this is doable for the patient. So clinical images is very important. As a dentist, if it's my time to do an exam on a patient, I walk into the room and my hygienist or my dental assistant does not have the intro photos on the screen. I look at them, I smirk, and I turn around and walk right back out. They know I will not do an exam until those images are on the screen, because it's part of our system. We have to have that habit on every patient.
One of the things that I actually forgot about design ergonomics that I was reminded of recently was that there's a history between Dr. Scott Leune and Breakaway Seminars and Dr. David Ahern and design ergonomics. So if you go back to the threads on Dentaltown, originally where Dr. Leune laid out his first practice that he designed from scratch and did that startup, he used design ergonomics to design his office nearly a decade ago, and he continues to reference them in his seminars today. And you guys know I love overlapping, reinforcing opinions, and these two companies, Design Ergonomics and Breakaway Seminars, are united on so many things, and they are all about rethinking dental office design, maximizing the return on your investment, and the ability to get into your own practice sooner rather than later, and doing so via efficient design. They share central stocking, rear delivery, the layout of operatories, and the amount of space that you can get into a given square footage. They're on board. The other thing you guys know I love is contrasting opinions. So if 2 people agree on 95% of the things, I love to know what they disagree on and why, and that's okay. For example, when it comes to delivery, so where the handpieces are, Breakaway preaches rear delivery off a do-it-yourself head wall and some low-cost equipment solutions. And while this is extremely economical, this method can have an impact on your career longevity because of the ergonomics. In contrast, Design Ergonomics recommends over-the-head delivery that allows for more ergonomic efficiency, which provides the dual benefit of improved health and significantly higher productivity. While the Ergo solution is marginally more expensive at launch, they have seen offices both increase production and have enhanced profitability that easily allows them to recoup the costs down the road. To learn more about different delivery system layouts and how they can impact your practice, go to desergo.com, desergo.com/delivery-systems. And on that site, they've got all 4 delivery systems: over the patient, side delivery, rear delivery, and over the head. No matter what you end up going with, Design Ergonomics is going to help you implement it in the most efficient way possible. For maximum discounts and savings, be sure to mention that you're a Shared Practices podcast listener when you go to designergonomics.com. So I was going to ask you, when you brought up diagnosis, how do you help these docs consistently diagnose what there is to be done? And it sounds like this is all tied together. So it's like you diagnose what you see if you have the confidence to present it, and then the financial options so that anyone could get that treatment done. Before we go on to the financial options, because I'm excited to talk to you about that and how you guys collect up front, is there any other systems that you guys have for consistent diagnosis?
Well, yeah. So diagnosis is a whole nother piece of the equation, because, diagnosing double the dentistry is kind of like doubling your case acceptance. You get the same result. And, diagnosis can come from easier things or harder things. And when I talk about easy or hard, I'm really talking about how you view yourself. Are you going to have an easy conversation with yourself or a hard conversation with yourself?
Okay.
So what I mean by that is, how do you diagnose more dentistry? Well, one easy way to diagnose more dentistry is to go learn how to do more dentistry. Go learn how to do ortho. Go learn how to do sleep apnea therapy. And suddenly when you learn how to do those things, you start diagnosing them as well. And you start diagnosing a lot more dentistry. A lot more dentistry. So I believe that clinical CE we should prioritize those CE classes that teach us how to do new things, because that will influence the business success of our entire career. So, I'm a big proponent of investing in learning how to do new procedures. That's one way to diagnose more dentistry.
Sure.
Then there's a harder conversation to have with ourselves, and that's saying, are we underdiagnosing? And we want to say no.
Everyone wants
to say no.
Everyone thinks they're perfect. They're like, I'm conservative. I'm doing the right thing. I'm not under or overdiagnosing. I'm nailing it every time.
That's right. I'm not like Dr. Smith down the street that diagnoses a crown in every tooth.
Right.
We say those things, but we got to be very careful, because those things can put us into a pretty bad rabbit hole here that we're going to have a hard time getting out of. So what I mean by that is, if we think about who gets fluoride in a dental practice, well, the vast majority of practices, who gets fluoride treatment is kids.
Kids, yeah.
Why? Because insurance pays for it. That is malpractice. There's not some genetic mutation that occurs in human beings when they turn 18. Now suddenly they're at low risk for decay and never need fluoride again. We're literally diagnosing purely based on insurance coverage. And what we should be doing, dental school 101, is we should be diagnosing fluoride on patients that are at high risk for decay.
Yeah.
And the easiest way to become high risk for decay is to have active decay.
Right.
So whether they're in a child or an adult, if they've got active decay, according to the ADA meta studies, we should be diagnosing fluoride.
Yep.
We should be sealing up their molars, right? Their open grooves, and with a real sealant, not a bullshit, sealant that a staff member just slaps on that's going to fall off in 3 hours.
Yeah.
So, those are the things we should be doing, but also if we've got patients that have signs of wear, they've got abfraction lesions, or they're complaining of headaches and things like that, that should lead us to preventative therapies. It's not overdiagnosing, it's being better at diagnosing. If we're going to do anterior restorative work, why would we also not proactively give them a night guard if we suspect that they may have some sort of nighttime habit? If we're going to do anterior restorative work, should we not also treatment plan to whiten their teeth first?
Right.
Right. So those are the types of conversations that we got to have with ourselves. It's easy to just diagnose fillings, crowns, root canals, and extractions, but that's not everything. We need to fully diagnose the patient. Preventative, elective, restorative, fully diagnose. And with images and with the right payment options, we can have the confidence to just say it all, because it's not about our trust anymore. It's just right there. We're point out that abfraction lesion. We point at that anterior wear, whatever it is, that open groove, and we can just say what's there.
Awesome. So that was great. That was exactly the kind of message that I'd hope you have with diagnosis. Because I just did a 2-year residency with the Army, and I see stuff now that I never saw before. It's like, now that I've done aesthetic crown lengthening, I see it everywhere. I'm like, oh, that guy needs it, and that guy needs it. And when you've done these procedures and learned about these procedures, you are going to see and talk about them with the patients. And sometimes it's out of your scope and you refer to a specialist, but sometimes it's a curve, or it's a slow pitch. It's pretty easy and you can knock it out of the park. So let's get into the payment options now. So how does having payment options make diagnosis and case acceptance easier?
Well, I think that what we're missing generally in dentistry is that we don't have a payment option for everyone yet. So what we have a payment option for people with money, they can just pay.
Right.
We have a payment option for people without money, but they have good credit. And that would be something like Care Credit. you know? And so those are traditionally, that's all we got is you either have to have money or you have to have credit. What we're missing is a payment option for people without money and without credit. Now that might sound like, well, why would I want those people?
They need dentistry too.
They pay. I mean, of course we want those people. That's probably half our patients. So now I got to have a much deeper discussion because let's first decide if we even want those people or not. So let's imagine that our practice has an absolutely full schedule. We can't cram anyone else in. We're booked out 4 weeks, right? That's our practice. The worst kind of patient we want to put into that schedule is a patient that doesn't pay. We'd much rather, because we're too far booked out. We got more patients than we can see. So let's only see people that pay, right?
Right.
So in that type of practice, we may not even need a third option. Maybe we only have options for people with money or people with credit. But that type of practice is pretty rare.
Well, and it seems like this is the same sort of thinking that you've shared on this show before about whether or not you should involve yourself with more insurance or less insurance. Is if you have a completely booked schedule, then why would you be taking on more insurances? If you don't have a booked schedule, then you might want to take on some insurances.
Well, yes, it's all about capacity, right? The capacity of your schedule. It's the big topic that no one talks about, but it's almost at the core and heart of everything I teach. Your capacity influences a ton of stuff. I mean, whether your schedule is full or empty completely changes what type of marketing you should be doing. Capacity is a big deal. So now back to payment options. If we have what I call closed capacity, meaning we're booked out, 4 weeks and we're not expanding. We are what we are. We don't have more ops. We don't have more hours. We're just too far booked out. Then maybe we don't want to bring in higher risk patients, meaning risk they won't pay. Okay.
Sure.
But let's talk about the other practice type, which is most practices. Most practices have openings. And if we have openings, okay. Well, do we want to bring people in that may not pay everything? Well, let's do the math.
Versus the alternative of no one in the chair paying nothing.
That's right. Option one is no one there. We have an empty chair. And option two is we have a patient that's not fully paying. Right? I know this isn't nirvana here. We're not talking about dental utopia where everyone pays magically, right? We're actually talking about real world now. So let's do the math. If I charge $1,000 for crown, that's my fee. Do I make money if a patient only pays me $800? Well, what are the costs for that crown?
There's the chair time and the lab costs.
No. So I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
Chair time is not an added cost to do that crown. If I had an empty chair,
that was a fixed cost that I already paid for.
That's right. So my rent, my utilities, my loan payment, my taxes, all that stuff, I got to pay whether I have no crown or a partial paying crown patient, right? So what's the cost to actually take on this additional patient, whether they pay me or not? The cost is the lab fee, and the cost is materials, right? That's what the cost is.
Yeah.
And, I don't know what your lab fees are. I bet most people for Brux or Crown probably have like $110 lab fee, something like that, I'm guessing.
Sure.
Now ours is $35 because we use the Dental Well Savings Network. We've basically created a network of private dentists to negotiate pricing and have better procurement. But anyway,
that's awesome.
But whatever it is, let's just say it's $100.
Okay.
So $100 lab fee plus materials. Let's say materials are, I don't know, $50, right? So we're in it $150. Technically, if all we collect is $150 from the patient for a $1,000 crown, technically we did not lose any money.
Sure.
Okay? Now let's add another cost. Let's say we're not even the dentist; we have an associate, and after paying them and their taxes, off of a $1,000 fee, that's $300. We got to pay them plus $100 lab fee and $50 materials. We're in $450.
Okay.
That's an associate-driven practice. Without an associate-driven practice, we're only in at $150. All right. So technically, if we can collect more money than one of those two numbers, we've made money. We've profited. So that patient walked in for $1,000 crown, and insurance paid half, and then the patient just paid 100 or 200 extra bucks and screwed us for the last $300 or $400. We made money. Okay. So let's now do that math again. Got an owner dentist, costs 150 bucks to do this crown. Insurance paid us 500, patient paid us 100. And then
still made money.
Screwed us out of the rest. We made money.
Yeah.
We collected 600 bucks. It cost us 150. We made 450 bucks. So option one is make 450 bucks and have a patient not pay us everything. Or option two is make nothing, right? So in an open capacity schedule, we got holes in the schedule. Being more aggressive with our payment options makes financial sense. Of course, we have to have the proper way of doing that. I'm not saying don't collect money from your patients. What I'm saying is we need an option for patients with no money and no credit.
So now I want to ask, and you're probably getting into this, what is the data that you've seen on in-house financing where you're not, outsourcing this to CareCredit, you're doing some sort of upfront collection to cover your base and then spreading out the rest over monthly payments? What is the default rate on that you guys have seen in your practices?
Well, we did in-house financing for years and years and years. That was our option for patients with no credit and no money.
Okay.
And our default rate was a little over 8%. That was a long time ago.
Okay.
I don't know what it is now, but that 8% is nothing. I mean, think about that. That $1,000 crown.
Better than a CareCredit.
Right. It's less than the CareCredit fee.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even if my default rate was 30%, if I've got an open schedule, I'm still making money.
Yeah.
But so let's talk about what are some of those options for.
Yeah, I made an assumption. So I made an assumption that we were talking about in-house financing. So what are the other options?
Well, yeah, in-house financing is one. It's a great option, but you have to understand how to do it. You have to understand the laws, the disclosures. There's a lot that goes into it.
And when you're scaling for like you guys, maybe it's not as easy one state as it is to the next. So it's a little trickier. But if you know your laws in your state and you can set it up, it's not a bad way to go.
Yeah, and there's also federal laws, the Fair Lending Act. I mean, there's all kinds of things you have to be compliant with. Another option is using a company like Comprehensive Finance.
Sure.
Basically in-house financing, but on their compliant platform. And they, on their system, through the compliance aspect of it, you are allowed to charge a high interest rate when you finance a high-risk patient. And that interest rate can more than make up for any failure rates. So it's a beautiful system. That's another example.
Do you have to run credit on those? I can't remember.
They have a kind of, it's not a credit check like
a soft credit.
They look at kind of the health of their checking account history.
Okay.
To kind of give you a risk level on that patient.
Sure.
And you as a practice can decide, what risk levels you want to take on. And if you've got openings in your schedule, I'm telling you, you want to be much more aggressive. Then there's other companies. There's a company we use that we love the product. We do not love the company, and we are actively looking to change companies. The product works great. The company, not so great. And there's other company, I almost hate to mention their name because I really don't want them to get business.
Well, so describe how is it different than Comprehensive Finance?
Yeah, so there's other companies out there that have some sort of hybrid between in-house financing and a guarantee.
Okay. So
you can have a patient sign up with the company so that they get monthly payments, but there's no credit check. So everyone's approved.
Okay.
And then but the patient is paying fees. So their cost goes up to be part of that company. Okay. And then the practice gets paid by that company every month, whether the patient pays or not.
Okay.
There's a couple companies out there like that. I know that one company I did not work with that at least used to do this, I don't know if they still do it, is called iCare Financial. There's other companies like Simple Pay used to do stuff like this. There's other companies, and then there's a company we're currently using that I'm not going to mention.
Okay, fair enough.
But I'm not mentioning them just because, to be honest with you,
You're looking to switch.
they have they've charged us fees on accident that we haven't been able to get removed, and it's just been a horrible experience. So I'm not going to mention them, but we do use them. My point of this is we need an option for people with no credit, no money, and we need to understand that if we have openings in our schedule, we could have a crazy failure rate and still make money.
Mm.
So even if we financed it ourselves, all those people that are telling us, don't be the bank. If Care Credit won't approve them, I won't approve them either. That is very short-sighted thinking. That is someone that doesn't understand the difference between fixed expenses and variable expenses. So in a situation where you've got these options, you need to present your normal options to patients. And then if they say no and they need a monthly payment plan, that's when you bring in the third option and understand that you can have a high failure rate and make great money on that.
So this has been awesome. We have a short period of time left. Can we dive into one last thing before we wrap it up?
Sure.
So you mentioned at the very beginning that your patients who schedule pay up front. So you're not taking care of the finances when they come back. You've got all that squared away. How and why do you guys do that?
Well, all three of our options require the patient to pay up front, whether it's paying with cash, paying with a credit card called Care Credit, or credit card called MasterCard, right?
Right.
Or signing up for the monthly payment plan and making an initial down payment. It's all causing them to pay up front. The day they got the exam, the day they're drinking the clinical Kool-Aid, right? The day they understand it all. And we do it because it does two really cool things. If patients no longer have to pay on the prep date or on the delivery date, therefore they actually show up on the prep date, show up on the delivery date, right? So when you make them pay, then some of them don't show.
Yeah.
So it helps our no-show rates go down on the doctor schedule. Also, if you make them prepay on the exam day, then they no longer have to check out on any of the future visits. They don't have to check out on the prep date. They already prepaid everything or scheduled everything. They don't have to check out on the delivery date. And so that cuts the checkout volume way down for the practice staff. Literally, patients from the doctor's schedule don't have to check out. So, what does what's it like in the front desk when you suddenly peel away all the checkout volume from the doctor's schedule?
You're being interrupted every 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, you can start answering more phones, you can confirm more appointments, you can, fight unpaid claims. I mean, there's all kinds of fill the doctor's schedule, fill hygiene schedule. You got more time to do the things that bring value as opposed to checking someone out. So, it's just examples of our model that we teach. Like the breakaway model is looking at reducing waste and fat. So it's efficient business operations combined with a high patient experience. And we make decisions based on data and we understand the damn P&L, right? So we know what hurts or helps us financially. We're not just crossing our fingers and logging into wellsfargo.com and hoping there's money in the bank.
Yeah.
And that's the model. Of course, at the heart, the foundation of our model is always ethical, quality clinical care, like always.
Yeah.
But when you look at the business aspect of providing that level of care, it's efficient, high patient experience, and we understand the profit and loss statements and what influences them in the practice.
That's fantastic. And that kind of leads right into my invitation. I'm actually going to the Business Master Seminar in December. So I'll be down there in San Antonio. If anyone of our listeners wants to join me, I would absolutely love it to go with some people who listen to the show. And you've got that whole track for those who are either not looking at doing a startup, but want to learn and understand your method so that they can apply that in their practice. You've also got, you mentioned before the show, we were talking, another clinical track. Is that for kind of your dental whale breakaway model only, or is that for open to other dentists who want to learn clinical through breakaway?
Yeah, let me answer a few things here. So first of all, so you're going to the Business Master Seminar on December 6th and 7th.
I am. Yep.
Okay, I didn't even, to be honest with you, I didn't know I had one in December. So
Hey, by the way, you've got one in December.
I'm gonna have to tell her. So we'll see how she. But yeah, you know what? No, that's right. I think that there's another Facebook doc, Ashley from the.
Oh, the making of a dental startup.
He's going to be at that one as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Ashley's going to be there. So okay, yeah. So that course is for. I mean, basically, it's our like flagship seminar. 2 days, 300 pages of exactly how to run a dental practice.
Awesome.
It's pretty intense. It's exhausting, and it's really cool.
I'm so excited.
Okay, so that's the business. Yeah, so then you asked about our Level Up series. So first of all, if anyone wants to look into this stuff up, breakawaypractice.com shows you the Business Master Seminar. And then the Level Up thing that you asked about, dentalwhalelevelup.com, that is, like a lot of things we do, that is a series of education that we put together for our own dentists inside of our group and our network. But we open up the remaining seats to the public, to any other dentists that want to come.
Okay.
And the Level Up course is really cool. It's taught by some pretty heavy hitters. I mean, one really well-known dentist, Marvin Berlin. He teaches a couple of courses. It is a really cool series of courses that combine clinical teaching and business teaching. So if you're learning how to do cosmetic dentistry, you're also learning how to take the photographs and get the case acceptance for it, for example. And it's an 18-month continuum where the dentists come in 6 different times over 18 months, and they learn things like taking out wisdom teeth, doing molar endo, and doing bone grafting, and doing, photography and cosmetic dentistry and operative and pediatric stuff and sleep apnea stuff and emergency management, and of course, all the business stuff around it as well, scheduling and case acceptance and billing and all that kind of stuff. So it's really cool. It's a cool series that we built and we had created to improve the productivity of our own dentists in our network.
Sure.
And just like we've also had hygiene stuff done, and there's all kinds of courses we offer here. People typically have no idea. But those courses are open to the public to fill our remaining seats. If anyone were to come to any of those, they'd be surrounded by our dentists.
Right.
But we do fill the rest of the room with seats from the public.
I love it that our audience has adopted your mindset and the things that you teach. And so we share a common language. It's really nice to be able to talk about the breakaway model and everyone's like, yeah, okay, we know exactly what you're talking about. So it's kind of the same thing when you go to a CE course with people who understand how to implement things and how to use data and how to read a P&L and are successfully implementing these things in their practices. I think that camaraderie of fellow dentists who are at the exact same spot you are in terms of their knowledge and understanding, or maybe a few steps ahead, and you can learn from them and learn from both the good and the bad things that they've tried in the past. That is almost as valuable as the CE itself.
You're right. There's too much noise in dentistry. Look, I love your group, your podcast, but there's a lot of groups, there's a lot of podcasts, there's 100 or 200 so-called experts with no data, and there's social media where the masses get to say their opinions to you, and it almost sounds like fact. And it's just too noisy now. People are, I try to stay off of all these forums because I'm just biting my tongue. I understand that half the stuff I see is total bullshit. So
it's usually an N of one where they've got one practice that they've seen one thing and they haven't even really experimented. And you've got a bunch of data, but you can't make them understand where you're coming from in a post, which is very frustrating.
You are totally right. But now let's take it a step forward. What I'm seeing is people quoting people, right? So I'm seeing people talk about, for example, someone might talk about some company, I don't know, some marketing firm out there, say, oh yeah, they're this and that and the other. And they've never used them. They're just re-quoting someone else who only used them for 2 months, right? And suddenly that becomes fact. And it's just the social media platform is a horrible platform to learn from unless you've got a closed group that is very focused on the same model. And so having this continuing education event with people of like mindset and like model is very valuable compared to just listening to the masses on Facebook.
Well, we will put a link to both breakaway seminars and also the Dental Whale. You said Level Up. What was it?
Yeah, dentalwelllevelup.com is we don't really market that course to a lot of people, but it's a really cool series for our own dentists.
Cool. We'll put that link in the show notes. So if people are interested, they can reach us or reach out to you guys there and see if there's any spots available for them. So thank you for coming on the show again. This was fantastic. I know this is not what we planned on talking about, but extremely valuable, a ton of specifics. Really, really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time. See ya. Okay, George, that was another phenomenal Dr. Leune episode and on case acceptance. I feel like I haven't heard him on other podcasts or other areas like bam, 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 laying all these things out. So I've got a list of takeaways here, but I wanted to hear what were some things that stood out for you.
Well, I think, kind of at the beginning of the episode where he was talking about one of the main takeaways I got was, he said 65% patient acceptance. If you're at that number, then it doesn't make sense to push for 75, 80, 90. And I guess that was something that I kind of had a feeling, but I wasn't sure. I always thought that you need to strive for more, but
drive for the 100%.
Yeah. But I feel like towards the end, he started talking about the importance of diagnosis as a total thing. And I think that's kind of what I've been finding too, is, your case acceptance and your treatment acceptance, those are great, but then your total diagnosis is, even more important, I think, if you have those two things in place, because that'll ultimately drive your growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And to reference the other number that they gave was that for them, they said less than 50% is like when it's a problem and you really need to focus on case acceptance. 50 to 65 is kind of that range. And then above 65, like you said, the marginal cost of let's get 1 more percent and how much training and attention and energy you're going to have to put into that 1% versus focusing on those other areas. And I love the idea too, that diagnosis and the case acceptance percentage, so like the total amount diagnosed and your percent acceptance, those two are hand in hand, two sides of the case acceptance coin. And if you're not kind of pushing yourself and seeing more and presenting more, then you're not growing in that way. And there's a lot more room for growth. And I think you've reached that point. I think that was one of the things we were talking about, is you feel like you've had some great improvements in case acceptance, and you've shared that in the course that we're building. But you're at that point where you're like, okay, now I've dialed in that side of the coin. Now I need to dial in and continue to grow that diagnosis side. Yeah,
I definitely think that, the growth in diagnosis is where, attention should be put. Because you're right. I mean, you do like he said, you get to the point where you're at those numbers. And it's funny, he was talking about how I'm potentially benefiting. I am definitely benefiting from all of the goodwill that, we purchased in the practice.
Yeah.
Patients have been coming here for 30 years. These are their people, they're hygienists that they know very well, told them they need something. And then I come in and, confirm that they need that thing, and I'm thinking it's me and it's not. I think that was good to hear, just for whatever reasons.
Whenever we can humble George, it's a good thing. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. It was good because, we do well in that department, and, it's good to see that, it might not be us,
Sure.
It might just be the situation that we're in.
Well, it's so nice to have that. And that is why you love acquisitions, is that you comes with all this goodwill and these people and these relationships and these connections, and someone walks in that office and they're completely comfortable. So it definitely helps. Let me think. Some other things from there. Oh, I liked this idea of closed capacity versus open capacity decision making, and treating patients without money and without credit. Not the ideal patient, but if your books are open and you have no one in the chair, you'd rather see that patient and get paid something than nothing.
Yeah. And I think that's, I think there's been a few things that philosophically we've been different from our sellers. And I think that's kind of a big one for us is, we have payment arrangements with patients. We brought some financing solutions. I'm not going to oversell it. We break up payments automatically over 12 months. Sure. Is kind of what we do. So, but that's it. But, we just want them in the chair. And right now we have some open capacity. We've added a doctor and whatnot. And so for us, it's like, I'd much rather have a patient, agreeing to pay over 12 months automatically in my chair doing all their treatment versus, them potentially saving up for 1 crown.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and plus, the insurance portion, it usually ends up being worth your time.
No, absolutely. And then, some other stuff that I loved was the simple financial options. And I love Graham's section of our course on that 1-page treatment presentation, just like super simple. There's like a spreadsheet that we give you in the course that breaks everything down. That got me so excited. Like literally building the case acceptance course has been so exciting for me because now I have all the specific tools and procedures and systems that I'm going to use in my practice eventually. Like in my mind, I'm like, this is awesome. We're building what I am going to actually use. And now I'm not worried about it. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to do George methods for, working with my hygienist. I'm going to use Graham Dursley's 1-page. I'm going to use Kira Dent's way of doing the route slips and presenting treatment. So it's just like all these things lined up in my mind. I'm like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. It makes me happy.
Yeah. And I think, it goes back to, once you have all those things in place, now what's next?
Right.
And I feel like it's really diagnosis. And I think that's kind of the thing that Justin was talking about in his episode is the importance of diagnosis. And, Scott really talked about adding services to grow your diagnostic eyes. But yeah, it's true. I mean, once all these things are in place, and the way to grow is by seeing more, versus converting more.
Well, I think people will really enjoy this episode. So if you guys liked this, like it on Facebook, share, what was your favorite takeaway? Give us a review on iTunes, reach out to Dr. Leune and thank him for being on the show, as well as go to one of his courses. We're going to have links in the show notes to Breakaway and what they have offered. It's going to be a little bit late for anyone to join me in the December course, but if you haven't and you'd like to come out to San Antonio this December, I'll be there I think it's the 6th and 7th or 7th and 8th. It'd be a lot of fun to see some people.
Awesome. See you guys next time on the Shared Practices podcast.